Grand Rising family. This is Chief Kalanago Flying Eagle. Hope everybody's doing well. Today, I got a lot of great information for you guys. Hold on for a second. Somebody's calling me. Give me 1 second. All right. I'll have to call that person back. All right, guys. Let me just make sure I have audio. Everything is good on YouTube and Facebook. Give me a second. Give me 1 second, please. Make sure I have audio. All right. YouTube is good. YouTube is good. All right, guys, I have some great information for y'all. Let me make sure Facebook is good. All right. And once again, let me pull up Facebook. Grand Rising. Okay. All right, guys. So once again, what I do is, I like to bring information to teach people. All right. So what we're going to do is, since today is Sunday, in regards to a biblical perspective when it comes to people going to church, I'm going to break down a few things. Now, before I do that, I want to acknowledge the Great Spirit, universal intelligence, universal I am. I want to acknowledge, of course, my ancestors, and just thanking them for guiding me and protecting me always. I know that any weapons formed against me will not prosper. All right. Now, with that being said, I'm going to talk about a few things today, but I'm also going to give you a little bit of history, because the key is to put things in perspective. All right. And the information that I'm going to give you today, you do what you want with it. I'm just here to bring you the facts. And again, the way you do whatever you choose to do with it is solely up to you. Okay. I'm a strong, not just believer. I know that only the truth will set us free. Only the truth and nothing else but the truth. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is, and then I'm going to work my way, into more present times. So we're going to talk about just a few things from the Bible real quick. And I saw a sister put a post on Facebook earlier about Hebrew Israelites, about the Israelites, and people were saying, well, hey, you know what? I'm an Israelite, I'm this and I'm that. Now, I'm not here to tell you who you are and who you are not. If you choose to be an Israelite, then know the foundation of where it came from. Okay? So that's why I'm doing this video, and that's why it's for educational purposes only, because I see our people get caught up in the concepts of what other people want them to be. Not because they know it's true, they just believe it's true. You see, there's a difference in believing and knowing. And a lot of people believe what they are and what they think is true, but they don't know that it's not true because nobody taught them otherwise. And even if you teach them the truth, there's such a thing called cognitive dissonance. It doesn't matter what you tell people, it doesn't matter what you show them, as long as it threatens, okay, their system of belief, they make you an enemy. Now, by no means I'm here to make myself an enemy to anyone. I'm just here to give you the facts, give you the truth. So with that being said, let's get into this. Okay, so we're going to start off with, the whole concept of Israel and where it came from in Jacob. All right. Now, I'm going to start with the Bible, because a lot of people hold the Bible to be the ultimate truth, the greatest book ever written. The truth of the matter is, yes, it is the greatest book ever written, but is it the greatest truth ever told? No. Okay? No. It's based on perspective. All right? And let me just get this right off the rip. Okay? Right off the top. The Bible is not a book that was written by a sky daddy. All right. So with that whole concept of, the Bible was written, by men that was, what they say, that was divine by God, whatever the case may be, that's a fallacy, because the men of the Bible, they imposed the most war on indigenous people in the world. So they wasn't inspired by no sky daddy, because that doesn't exist. Okay. So with that being said, let's just put this in perspective. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is I'm going to go to the Bible itself and verify everything that I'm talking about, because I don't like to make things up. All right. I like to show the facts. And since people believe the Bible is the ultimate truth, then let's start with that. Okay. Let's start with that. All right. But people don't realize that the Bible is an allegory. Okay. Some things were of historic findings, and some things were made up, and some things were spiritual. Okay. When you read the Bible, you have to read the Bible from three different perspectives. Okay. Spiritual, allegorical, and physical. Okay. So they combine all three of those elements to write the Bible. But a lot of people don't look at the allegorical aspect of the Bible. They only look at the spiritual and the physical, and they forget the allegory. When the truth of the matter is, the allegory came before the physical. What does that mean? It means that the symbolism of what was spoken in the Bible became real later. All right. So let us look at the first word. Before we go into the Bible, let us look at the etymology and the meaning of the word allegory, because people don't seem to know that. So let's talk about that real quick. Okay. If you want to get a pen and a pad to take some notes, you could do that, or you could go over the video at a later date. But we are going to look at the meaning first, and then the allegory of the etymology of allegory. Okay. Where's that? Where did I have that at? Give me 1 second. All right, good. There we go. I have so many tabs opened up, guys. Give me 1 second, please. Let me just get this together, okay? Because I really don't plan these things. It just came to me just to do this. All right, there we go. So I'm going to give you the definition and then the meaning. Okay, there's a difference between a definition and a meaning. All right, so I'm going to show you the meaning first of allegory. Allegory, all right, a noun, a story, a poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or a political one. I'm going to read that again. Allegory, a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or a political one. Pilgrim's Progress is an allegory of the spiritual journey. Now, let us look at the synonyms. All right, a synonym is a word that is similar in nature. So a similar, parable. That's why Jesus spoke in parables. It wasn't real. Okay. Analogy, a metaphor, a symbol, an emblem, a tale, a myth. In other words, it's a fairy tale. That's an allegory. Okay. And that is the meaning of that, the definition. Let us go look at the meaning from from etymology. Okay. Etymologically speaking, let us go look at what allegory means. So we see that an allegory is a story, a tale, a fairy tale, a myth. Okay. Let us go into the etymology of allegory. Etymology is the original meaning of a word. Okay. Figurative treatment of an unmentioned subject under the guise of another, similar to it in some way. Okay? When we look at this word here, it says, speaking about something else, another different, basically a language, a description, one thing under the image of another. All right, family? So that's what an allegory is. It meaning that it wasn't meant to be taken literally. Now, why is this word so significant? This word is very significant because allegory was mentioned in the Bible. That's why I had to give you the meaning and the definition and the meaning of the word allegory. Okay, meant to tell you something different. A fairy tale, a myth. All right, that's what allegory means. Now let us go into the Bible, the King James Version or any version. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. It speaks of an allegory. Okay? Let us go. Galatians 4:21. Now, you guys, again, don't believe anything that I say. All right? Do your own research. I'm just giving you the facts. All right? So let's go into Galatians 4:21 to 31. We don't have to read the entire thing, but we'll go where we see the word allegory in Galatians. Galatians 21. Tell me, ye that desire to be under the law, do ye not hear the law? 22. For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he after the free woman was by promise. Look at 24. This is very important. 24, which things are an allegory. In other words, it wasn't real. It was meant to tell you something else. So in other words, Abraham wasn't real. Okay, now, I'm not the one telling you this. It's in the book. I'm just giving you the facts. So when people are saying they are this and they are that, know the foundation of what you're saying. You see what I'm saying? Know the foundation of what you're saying and what you're claiming. I'm going to read this again. But before I do, I'm going to pull up the meaning of allegory again. I showed you the etymology. I'm going to show you the meaning again, so that we stay in context. Okay? Give me 1 second here, guys. We're going to go back and forth with this. All right? Allegory. Okay? A tale, a myth, a story, a symbol, a metaphor. All right? An analogy, a parable. That's what allegory means. So if allegory actually means that, then when we look at where we are reading from Galatians, okay? When we are reading in Galatians, let's start off at verse 23. But he who was born of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by promise. This is key. 24 is very, very significant. Why? Because it says, which things are an allegory? For these are the two covenants, the one from the Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Agar. Okay? And 25 says, for this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which is now and is in bondage with her children. So, what was done, like I said, when the Bible was written, the Bible has to be broken down in three different perspectives: spiritual, physical, and allegory. Okay? The allegorical aspect of the Bible is never taught, because now you will know it wasn't real, in a sense of it being written by a sky daddy or men that were inspired by a sky daddy. When you look at the English language, back in the days when they said God, they were not talking about a sky daddy. They were talking about a nobleman, a king, a lord of England, a lord of Scotland. Okay? That's what you have to know, in what age and what day and what was going on around the world when the Bible was written. Okay? So when you see Lord in the Bible, it is not a sky daddy. It is a nobleman. It's a king. All right? And I've done a video and broken that down to you guys. That King James, the one who wrote the Bible, yes, he was a so-called black man. And the Bible is his genealogy. That's of his ancestry, of his journey, of his people. Once again, the Bible had nothing to do with the Americas or even certain parts of the world. All right. This was a certain group of people that was telling their story. Okay. And the Bible became global. Why? Because they fought all over the world to enslave people and force their ideology and their armies, their religion on them. Okay. So if Abraham was an allegory, then how could anybody claim to be a descendant of Abraham when Abraham wasn't real? Now you see how people get confused? Do you see how the miseducation is being taught? And people are here taking these things literally. It wasn't meant to be taken literally, family. Again, I'm going to show you right here. I'm not making this up. All right? Go read it for yourself. Galatians 4:21-31. But we are going to focus on verse 24 particularly, which things are an allegory. Allegory. It was a myth, a story, analogy, a metaphor, a fairy tale. Now, does it mean it doesn't hold significance? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it wasn't written, it has nothing to do with a sky daddy. Okay, so I just wanted to clear that up. Now, when it comes to talking about Israel, let us get into that real quick. Because people think, well, a God came from above and changed a name from Jacob to Israel. No, that was a man who decided to change his name. It had nothing to do with a sky daddy because that don't exist. Okay. Let me stop sharing my screen and let's go into this one real quick. And let's talk about Jacobitism. What is it and where did it come from? All right. And show you who the first Jacobite was. And then he changed his name to Israel. Okay. Because people are just lost, man. And people are lost because they don't research anything outside of that book. That's the problem. Because they were taught that book is the ultimate truth. It is somebody's truth, but it's not everybody's truth. All right, there's a difference. Okay. Now, Jacobitism. Let us read a little bit on that. Reading is fun for the mental. All right. Jacobitism, Scottish. You have to know the origin and where that came from. All right. Like I told y'all before, the original Jacobites, the original Israelites are actually Scottish and Ireland. Okay. They're from Ireland and Scotland, which is essentially the same people, just a different dialect in the language. So the original Israelites came from Scotland and Ireland. Now, it doesn't mean that they were pale skinned. No, they were so-called black people. King James was a so-called black man. King George was a so-called black man. And I'm going to show you the transition of how all this happened, why the pale man is in power right now. So I'm going to cram a lot of things in this lesson, but I have to start off here first so that the people who going around calling themselves Israelites know where it came from and know what it means. Okay? It did not come from a sky daddy. Oh, well, the Lord, he said this. First of all, if you look at the true essence of what the Great Spirit is, the Great Spirit is not a he or a she. The Great Spirit is just intelligence, the universal all, the universal I am. Anytime you start calling your God a he or a she, then you are personalizing that image. That's your personal preference, and that's fine. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to condemn anybody for calling their God a he or a she. That's your personal relationship. All right? So, Jacobitism. All right? So here we are, largely 17th and 18th century movement that supported the restoration of the senior line of the House of Stuart, okay, to the British throne. The name is derived from what? Jacobus, the Latin version of James. Now, King James the Sixth, when we look at Jacobus, is a masculine first name, which is a variant of what? Jacob. Jack, James, the name may refer to. So therefore, James, King James, changed his name from, he was the first Jacobite, because that's a variation. And what he did was, he said he had a dream that he wrestled with an angel. Now, what's an angel? An angel is an angle of light. Angel, A-N-G-E-L. If you look in the word itself, you'll see that you'll find angle. An angel is an angle of light. When you are in a state of meditation, okay, and you know, because I've done that. I have seen angels, an angle of light in meditation, okay, where you see a certain light, and you know that light could speak to you, so to speak, like you hear a voice, okay, that is an angle of light. That's an angel. So Jacob, King James, the first Jacobite, he changed his name to Israel. Okay, now let's read some more. When James 2 and James 7 went into exile after the 1688 glorious revolution, the Parliament of England argued, abandoned that English throne and offered it to his Protestant daughter Mary II and her husband William III. In April, the Scottish Convention held forfeited the throne of Scotland by his actions listed in the Articles of Grievances. The revolution created the principle of contract between the monarch and the people. If that was violated, he or she could be removed. Jacobites argued monarchs were appointed by God. Okay? Appointed by God or divine right, and could not be removed, making the post-1688 regime illegitimate. While this was the most consistent difference, Jacobitism was a complex mix of ideas, many opposed by the Stuarts themselves. In Ireland, it meant tolerance for Catholicism, which James supported, but it also meant granting Irish autonomy and reversing the 17th century land settlements, both of which he opposed. So family, as you could see, like I said, the Scottish and the Irish, they are related. They are the same people. They just spoke a different dialect when it comes to a language. However, the Irish and the Scottish, okay, they were the tribes of the Jacobites, that movement, Jacob, King James, and he changed his name to Israel. Why? Particularly because he journeyed into the Americas and took a lot of his subjects with him that he called the Israelites. That's why in Deuteronomy 28, he clearly stated that, okay, God said he are going to take their people into a foreign land and make them slaves. No, they came here not as slaves. So even when the Israelites and the Hebrew Israelites teach that, they are misguided because they did not come here as slaves. They came here as indentured servants on contracts. However, indentured servants that became slaves. Now, the question remains, does it mean that they are not Israelites? That's not what I'm saying. But they don't know what Israel means. They don't know where it came from. They don't know the foundation of the word or the idea of being an Israelite, because they think it came from a sky daddy. It did not come from a sky daddy. It was King James that changed his name, because King James is the Jacobite. Jacob, James is the same variation that changed his name from Jacob to Israel. Okay, as you could see, he says what? The revolution created the principle of contract between the monarch and the people. If that was violated, he or she could be removed. Jacobites argued Monarchs were appointed by what? God or divine right. So in other words, these people just took power. That's why on the dollar bill it says in God we trust, because they have their own version of what God is. These people don't serve the God that you think you're serving, but you are serving their God. It is a created image. So that is the foundation of Jacob. Okay, King James was Jacob. You see what I'm saying? So if he was the chief of the Israelites, so maybe you could be an Israelite, but please know what it means. And no, you did not come here as slaves. And yes, he did promise you the land in the Americas, but he cannot do that because it was taken by force. So he cannot promise you something that wasn't his in the first place. So we are not all Israelites. We all did not come from the 12 tribes. No, that's his lineage. That's his ancestry. That's his genealogy. The Bible is about his ancestry and the journey of his people. Okay? So let us go into the next thing here. Give me 1 second. Now, remember we spoke about the Stuarts, right? The Stuarts. The highlands of Europe at that time, they had clans. Now, like I told y'all before, the original clans are not the so-called pale people or so-called white people that's going around with white sheets over their head. Okay, they're not the original clans. The original clans, okay, you see, you have to know the history, man, and you cannot just look at world history from what happened in the United States. The United States is just a small piece of the pie. Nobody is doing the research and putting the dates, the parallel dates together and see what was happening around the world the same time to see what was happening in the United States. Okay? So what I'm going to show you next is I'm going to show you a couple of maps, all right, just to point out, to show you a few of the clans. But let me just kind of close this out here real quick. So let me close this out. I'm done with this one. All right. And I'm going to show you even with Harriet Tubman. I'm going to touch that. I'm going to touch a little bit of that as well. Harriet Tubman. Okay. Harriet Tubman spent her formative years around Madison. After living in Bucktown as a young child and adolescent, teenage Harriet Tubman was hired out to work for John T. Stewart. Okay? John T. Stewart wasn't a so-called white slave master. Okay? John T. Stewart was a so-called black man. He was one of the nobles that came into the Americas. He was a Highlander. Okay? Now, Stewart has the variation of being spelled Stewart or Stuat. Different variations of spelling the word. Okay? So I'm going to show you the map. Let us go. Let me show you that map real quick. Let me stop sharing that. So Harriet Tubman worked for a Stewart, a nobleman, a free so-called black man, but he wasn't a slave. He was never a slave. He came here as a free man. Why? Because they were the colonizers. Once again, the so-called white man is not the one who colonized you. The so-called white, you see, y'all giving this so-called white man too much credit. All he did was learn the game, master the game, and patent the game, which is what they do. No disrespect. They haven't, or they have not created anything original, anything. No disrespect. However, yes, they claim stuff. All right. Let me go show you this map. As you could see, she worked for a steward. Let us go to this map right here. Okay. Those are some of the clans that were in Scotland around that time. You know, Scotland, Ireland, Britain. Okay. Those are some of the clans. So when you see a lot of those surnames that you have, your so-called last names, those are not names of the slave master that you think was so-called white. No. Those were the names of the slave masters who were black. And I'm saying black here, not because they were black, but just for, this lesson's sake. Yes, they are the names of a slave master, but it wasn't the name of a so-called white slave master. It was the name of a so-called black slave master. That's why a lot of people hold on to those names so dearly, because it came from people who look just like them. Family, y'all got to know the history in its proper context and not what's being taught to you. So I'm bringing all this stuff to light to open up your mind. Okay? Open up your mind. And I'm also going to show you, not today, in another lesson, I'm going to show you a lot of these so-called slaves who came here. They were not slaves. They came from, some of them came from kings and queens. Not that they were kings and queens. No, they came under the empire, from the empire of kings and queens. The Shanghai. Some of them came here. They did not come here as slaves. They came here as indentured servants. Okay? So look at some of the names. McLeod, McKay, Sutherland, Gunn, Uggunn. Okay, that's a Scottish a Highlander. Okay, McDonald, Ross, Mackenzie, Nicholson, Fraser, Keith, Chatton, Gordon, Moray, Graham, the Mackenzies, the Campbells. All right, the Bruce. Okay, the Bruce was also one of the Highlanders. The Royal Stewart, right here. The Royal Stewart, Edinburgh. Okay, you see that? Harriet Tubman worked for one of them. Okay, here we go again on the map. You have the Kennedy. Okay, you have the Stewart. Why do you think the name Kennedy is so huge? Why? Because it's not that they were the original Kennedys. No, they were not the original Kennedys. Okay? Here's what I'm going to blow your mind with this. Okay? They were indentured servants of the original Kennedys, and they took on that name. I'm going to repeat that. They were indentured servants of the original Kennedys, which was so-called black people. So Harriet Tubman worked for a steward. And during the revolution, the wars, okay, when they were losing power, the so-called black man and so-called black nobles were losing power, Harriet Tubman had to protect that noble bloodline. And that was hence the moral story of the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman wasn't freeing regular slaves. Harriet Tubman was freeing nobility. They had a fear of that would have been enslaved. Okay, so that's one map. All right, let me show you another one. Let me show you another map. Let me see. I think that's it right here. The Scotsman. That's another map. Okay. All these names are from the Highlands of Scotland and Ireland. Okay. You have Forbes. You have Gordon. You have Clan Chatton. You have the Grant clan. Grant as well. Of course, I mentioned the Mackenzies, Duncan, McDuff. You also have here again the Stewarts, okay? McLean. You have Stewart right here in the middle, next to McLean, okay? The point I'm making is I'm showing you the foundation of where all this came from. So Harriet Tubman, once again, wasn't freeing slaves. Harriet Tubman she was freeing indentured servants, being threatened to be slaves, but they were of nobility. They were of nobility. Okay? Now, I want to show you a map. Before I go into the Revolutionary War, I want to show you a map. All right? Which is an actual map that was created. So I could show you again that all these things were allegory. Now, we are looking at it now from a spiritual perspective, okay, that turned physical. Let us look at this map. And this map is a well-documented, legitimate map, all right, that was created in 1773. It was published according to Act of Parliament by J. Brockland, okay, and that was the 18th of January, 1773, all right, and this map, give me a second here, please. Come on, man. This map is the journey of life. It's a journey of life map, or an accurate map of the roads, countries, towns in the ways to happiness and ministry, and misery. Okay, I'm going to read that again because everything is allegory. So because the Bible was allegory, they created an allegorical map. All they did was just put names of places. Okay, the journey of life. So on this map, you would see that the highest point of this map, glory, is the heavens. All that stuff is in the mind. The mental realm is the heavenly realm. Okay, and the lower you go on the map, okay, the lower you go on the map, you will see where they have, you know, the borders of hell. And at the bottom of that map, you will see that they have hell, because everything is an allegory. It's about the higher self and the lower self. Okay? It's about the higher self and the lower self. Everything is internal. Okay? Everything is internal. So if you look at this map, okay, and then the bottom line, it says what? Right here. It says, to know reader, which road you are traveling and what countries, towns you have. I can't really see this. Something going through that you are going through seriously, something between God and your own soul. What are your thoughts, your words, your actions, life, the company do you keep, etc., etc. But it says what? The bottom line right there in the middle, it says what? Know thyself. Okay, family? Know thyself. So for you to get to heaven, you have to what? Know thyself. Not know the Bible, but know thyself. Not know Jesus, but know thyself. Because it's all about the journey to your lower self, to your higher self. Okay? It's all about your lower self. In fact, let me get this map right here, and I'm going to share it with you guys in the chat so you'll have it. And I'll also put it in the description of the video. So take your time and go through the map. I just put it in the description for you guys. Okay? Let me share this again. So the key to salvation, the key to going to heaven is truly knowing yourself, ascending from your lower self into your higher self. That's heaven. So as you could see on this map, this road map, okay, of life, this roadmap, it talks about knowing yourself. That's what it is. It says, in the way to heaven or hell, say happy, Christian, for you only know what real pleasure from religion flow, vice, it's on purification will ever prove. Religion leads to life full something something, but the bottom line is you have to know yourself. That's the key. All right, so this map here, it gives you that. So back in the days when they were teaching about the Bible, they had this map, they had the Bible dictionary, and they were teaching people the truth about ascension. They were teaching people the truth about, about spiritual freedom. They were actually teaching people that they were gods. Okay? So you have to go through all these transitions before you go to heaven. So as you could see, okay? Right down where it says hell, the bottomless pit, the greatest decree of vice and misery, that's in your lower self, the borders of hell, the burden of hell. But when you start growing into your ascension, you will see the different levels that you have to go through in life, that journey, go through that map. Okay? As you could see right here. You in your hell state, right? Then you're starting to ascend. The plane of rivalry, luxury, free thinking, vainglory, all those things you have to go through, interference. Then you have to go to a point where you reach a stage in your life. You have to go to what? Repentance. Jesus, the allegorical Jesus, did all that. Jesus had to repent. Why do you think he had to baptize? Why? Because he was a sinner like everybody else. But people walking around thinking that Jesus was this perfect man. No, Jesus wasn't a perfect man. He became a perfect man when he repented and he got baptized and he became the Christ. But Jesus was a man that was doing everything else. Jesus had a wife. Okay, he was banging Mary Magdalene. That was Jesus' peace. Okay, Jesus had a woman. Jesus was eating the cookie. So, y'all got to stop playing around, man. But he had to come to the point where he had to repent. He had to baptize by John. And it wasn't a physical baptism. It was internal. Because like I said, we all have the 12 faculties, which are your 12 disciples. And John the Baptist is the one that's going to baptize you. Repent. Okay? And then once you repent, you grow your faith. Still going through perseverance. And then once, of course, you have baptized, you ascend into your Christ. That's where you get into the glorious realm, which is the heavenly realm, which is all a state of mind. It is all a state of mind, immorality, eternal life. Okay, the spirits rest. In other words, the spirits come to a point where it don't have to go through all the trials and tribulations anymore. That's where it comes to rest. Okay? Family, it's, we have to get this. All right? We got to get it. All right? Of course, Jesus was trained because at the age of 12, he had to go into Egypt to be trained by the elders. Okay? He had to go be trained by the elders. All right? So, I wanted to kind of drop that for you guys. Also, what we went through here. We are going to talk about the Revolutionary War real quick, because a lot of times you have to put two and two together to really step into the truth, okay, of what things are and what they were. It doesn't matter what the name was. It doesn't matter what the name was, whether it's Yeshua, It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Jesus is Yeshua and Yeshua is Jesus. All they did was they took the J and they made it a Y because the letter J didn't exist before the 17th century. So whether you say Yeshua, Jesus is the same bloody thing. It's the same thing. It doesn't make it more real by saying Yeshua. Okay? It doesn't make it more real by saying Yeshua. Yeshua is also an illusion. So when people, oh, well, it's not Jesus, it's Yeshua. Well, duh, it's the same thing. Nobody's wrong. Nobody's right. You could call it anything you want. You could call it anything you want. You could give it your own name. I mean, you could call your God potato skin. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. That's your personal relationship. Jesus was the name that was created because of the personal relationship of a culture. And because of that culture, they took that and they went around the world, okay, as a legion, all right, and fought indigenous people all over the world and forced Jesus on indigenous people. So it doesn't make a difference what you call it. It all goes back to Heru. It's the same thing. It all goes back to what the sun is, the same thing. Okay? So, what do we have here? Give me 1 second here. Let me pull this up for y'all. Okay? Boom, boom, boom. Allegory, I did that. Okay. I did, okay, I did that. Now, I'm going to show you the transition, okay, because a lot of people are always asking. All this is important, okay? Reason why it's important is because you have to realize that all the so-called kings, okay, and queens before the 16th century, they were so-called black people, okay? They were so-called black people, all right? Let me see. Let's go here. Let's share this. All right. Let us talk about the Revolutionary War here for a second. And we're going to cross-reference that with what was happening in Europe, in England at the same time. Okay. Now, like I told y'all before, not every so-called white person, and I'm saying so-called pale people, are the same people. Okay. Just like how you have not so-called every so-called black person are the same people. All right. We have different genes. Okay. So the point is, during the Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, let us put that in perspective. Okay. What was the Revolutionary War? The Revolutionary War, also known as the what? American Revolution, arose from growing tension between residents of Great Britain's 13 North American colonies and the colonial government, which represented the British Crown. So family, at that time, the British Crown was so-called black kings and queens. You see, people don't know this. Why do you think the so-called white people in the Americas, and it wasn't just white people alone, it was so-called black nobles as well, okay? Why do you think they were fighting Britain? They were fighting Britain because Britain, the kings and queens in Britain in the 1700s were still so-called black. However, to put this in perspective, you have to go look at the chronology of war in Britain to put this in perspective. So what I'm going to do at this time is I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the list of wars involving England, okay? And you have to look at all these different wars so you could know exactly what's going on, all right? List of wars involving England. The list, this is a list of wars involving the Kingdom of England before creation of the Kingdom of Great Britain by Acts of the Union 1707 For dates after 1708, see a list of wars involving the United Kingdom. Okay, you have the 10th century, the 12th century. Okay, all these wars. You see, people think that the world did, when you're only looking at history, they don't tell you history of what was happening across the world. No, you only know about the American Revolution. Let me ask you a question. What was happening before the American Revolution? There were wars in England, okay, where the rise of the pale man. You see, people are not looking at that. Why? Because a lot of these pale people were indentured servants of black kings and queens. Why do you think a lot of them hate you so much? Because you were the masters. Now, I'm not saying every pale person was enslaved. No, because they also had clans of so-called white people, indigenous white people in Europe. However, they were forced to be indentured servants all over the world. All over the world. Okay? There was a point in time where in the entire Americas, there were no so-called pale people. None whatsoever. None. Not even close. Because there are oral stories, okay, where our ancestors have never seen anybody close to looking white. So that's why these natives could never come to me, because y'all are pale. And if our ancestors have never seen the likes of pale people, how can you say you're the original people of this land? When our ancestors had never seen anything of your complexion. So I'm not going to turn this into, bad talking natives. That's not what this is about. I'm just showing you that at some point in the Americas, our ancestors had never seen a certain complexion that looked like white. We had never seen that. We had light skin, red bone, because all that's part of the Americas. But I'm talking about pale people. We had never seen the likes of that. Now, when you go into the genealogy, or the chronology rather, of the timeline of wars in Britain, let us start with the 10th century. You have all these different wars. The various kings of Wales, the Scottish kings of News Gales, status quo antebellum. You have victory wars, right? The Northumbria becomes absorbed by the kingdom of England. Then you have the defeat in 1066. Now, when you go all these wars, the Holy Roman Empire in the 10th century, all these wars, okay, the Kingdom of France, Duchy of Apulia, the Byzantine War, okay, the Armenian, the Kingdom of Cilicia, all these wars were between so-called black people. They were not so-called white people. They were so-called dark-skinned people fighting each other, where they were enslaving their own, enslaving pale people. Pale people were enslaved all over the world. However, the error and the mistake came when they started sleeping with their white concubines. That was the mistake. And they started having these mulatto children all over the world. So now, a slave mother, but a noble father makes the child noble. I'm going to repeat that. Okay? I'm going to repeat that. A slave mother, whether it's a Caucasian mother or a pale mother or a so-called black mother, having a child by a black noble makes that child nobility. So when these mulatto children started becoming nobles and they had to take the throne, that was the mistake of the so-called black kings and queens, these so-called black kings. They slept with the pale woman. So the mulatto children became nobility. And that's when they started asking questions. Well, I see my mother is looking white, she's pale, but why my father is black? You trying to tell me no so-called pale men exist. There was some point, family, I'm giving y'all real facts. There was some time when these pale children, when these mulatto children had never seen a so-called white man because their fathers were so-called black. They didn't know that exists until their mothers started telling them of the enslavement of their white grandfathers. And when they took power, they made it a big, due to the request of their white mothers, they had to go around the world fighting wars against their black fathers to free their white grandfathers. You see what I'm saying? So y'all have to go around the world and look at the timeline and put these things together to learn the truth. And eventually, because of the mulatto children that brought their pale grandfathers back into what we call civilization, they taught them how to fight. They taught them how to navigate. Guess what? They rose into power. Now, I'm not talking about across the globe because there were still indigenous white clans. They have different so-called pale people. Okay, so when you look at Britain, Britain had Britons, which was the so-called black, okay, so-called black Britons, and you also had so-called white Britons. And then when they were fighting for power, eventually the so-called pale people, they rose to victory. Why? Because their mulatto children helped them enslave. Okay, in other words, they, karma happened, and these so-called black nobles, they became the indentured servants of their mulatto children. Some of them even became prisoners of war. That's how they ended up coming into the Americas. Okay, that's how they ended up coming into the Americas. King Ferdinand was a mulatto. Queen Isabella was a mulatto. So when they came here in a little before 1492, it was people who looked just like us that came here. King James was a so-called black man. All right. So I just wanted to kind of tie everything in. What does it have to do with what I started with the Israelites? Why? Because I have to show you how King James, the first Jacobite, the first Israelite, he was the one who came here into the Americas with the sword and say, listen, y'all are going to learn about our God. It's either you learn about our God or you're going to be enslaved, you're going to die, or you're going to go to prison. That was the choice. But keep in mind, all the wars that were fought on the American continent, don't matter what they did, they combined. I'm talking about the so-called black nobles. They combined with their mulatto children. They even got to a point where they got pale people to help them fight. And we never lost a physical battle. Okay, I'm telling you facts. Our people lost the battle with treaties. We lost the war on paper, but we never lost a physical battle. We never lost the wars. The United States is not independent. Okay, it was a cease of fire, and a treaty was made. The United States is still under the crown. It wasn't independent. So when we go back to the American Revolutionary War, you have to ask yourself this question, okay? If at that time, so-called white people was in power and England was all white, why would you be fighting why would you be fighting? Family, listen to what I'm saying very carefully. During the American Revolutionary War, if it was white people that was fighting for, America was fighting for their freedom from Britain, and America was literally, the United States at that time was considered to be white. Why are you, if the kings in England of king, if the king and queens of England were white, why are you fighting white people? They were not white, they were black. And I'm saying we know nobody's white or black, but I'm just using that for this lesson. Okay? They were fighting the black nobility to take down their black fathers. So I just give y'all a synopsis of what happened. I mean, it goes in more detail. And when I say more detail, I'm talking about I could have refined the information, but it's just going to take too long. I cannot cram this in one video. That would be like literally a whole couple of weeks breaking things down and go by date and talking about that war and this and that. Family, I'm telling y'all, okay? But I'm just giving y'all a synopsis of what happened and how this transpired. Okay. Now let me show y'all something. Okay. Let me give y'all something real quick. Timeline of wars between the American Indians. All right. All right. Timeline of wars with. Now, let me show y'all something real quick, and then I'll conclude this, okay? Let me just show y'all something real quick. I hope somebody have more time if they so choose, and they want to, go in more detail with this. But guys, I'm just giving you stuff to open up your mind, okay? We're talking about wars here now, right? This is a summary of wars. Over 200 and something wars were fought with the American Indians, okay? And all these people that came here. When we're talking about, first off, the name of the conflict, it wasn't a conflict, it was a war. 1622 to 1624, the Powhatan Confederacy, right? That is where it really kicked off, right here in the United States, okay? At that time, the Powhatan people, the Indians, they were so-called black people, okay? The Pequot War, the Beaver Wars, King Philip's War, the Pueblo Revolt, the French and the Indian War, the Tuscarora War, the Pontiac's Rebellion, Lord Don Moore's War, Northwest Indian War, the Tecumseh War, the Creek War, the Peoria War, the War of 1812, First Seminole War, Winnebago War, Black Hawk War, Creek Alabama Uprising, Osage Indian War, the Sioux War, the Rogue River War, the Third Seminole War, the Apache Wars, the Ute Wars, the Red River War. It's just going on and on and on and on. Don't think our ancestors were just sitting around allowing these people to take our stuff. No. Okay? Our ancestors fought, and we were annihilating all the enemies, whether they combined together, whether they were by themselves. I'm telling you, our people got tricked with the paper, with the treaties, when they said, listen, okay, you know what? You Indians are too fierce, because the so-called black people that came here, that fought us, they brought in the pale people. And yes, some of the Moors were involved. Not all of them were not Moors. So when y'all spreading the rumors about the Moors came here and did this to us, it wasn't just Moors. Okay? These black nobles did not call themselves Moors. All right? And the truth of the matter is, some of our ancestors helped out as well. And they got a price to pay for that. Okay? They got a price to pay for that as well, because they did help them. A lot of them were in a state of confusion, because first off, okay, when it first started, it was people who looked like us, who came here that looked like us. So we trusted them. You are my brother. I don't know you. You look different from me, but we are the same complexion. They trusted them. and they betrayed us. Okay? And now here comes, well, they were just from over Europe. Some of them were from Asia. I'm talking about it. Remember, you know, when we look at the Holy Roman Empire, it was a combination of not just Spain, but that entire landmass. I'm talking about Asia, Europe, and so-called Africa. Africa wasn't even called Africa. Okay? And though the Roman Empire, okay, were of so-called black people. So they were from all over. So when we putting this in perspective, I keep telling people, y'all are giving the so-called white man too much power. He wasn't the one who came here to take our land in the first place. It was people who looked just like us, okay? The king of the Israelites, King James, he was one of the culprits. King George was a black king from Germany. Now here's a little something that's going to blow your mind, okay? The original Germans of the Holocaust, it wasn't white people, it was black people. But they wrote themselves into the story, okay, to get the reparations. It was the black Germans. Okay? All over Europe, when they were fighting in the early 1100s, they had already abolished slavery. Okay? They had already abolished slavery and introduced a system of indentured servantry. Okay? So when they came here, there was no such thing as slavery in the 1400s. There was no such thing as slavery even in the 1600s. In the early 1700s, there was no slavery. However, I think in the mid 1800s, King George said, nah, man, forget that. We're enslaving people. So he brought back slavery. Okay? Hold on for a second. What the hell is that, man? So he brought back slavery. All right? But everything was done with contracts, indentured servantry. All the people they say that came here as on slave ships, all the 12 and 20 million, that's a lie. That's a lie. Yes, don't get me wrong. So-called black people came here, but they were not all from Africa. Okay? Some of them was from Europe. Okay? Some of them was from Asia. Why do you think you have a lot of so-called, when you started seeing pictures of, the further back you go, when you start looking at these natives, right? You will see that they have dark skin, but they have these slanted eyes. And eventually it lightened up. Okay? That is because why? They were so-called black Asian slaves, Japanese. Why do you think America had to fight Japan? Because there was an influx of so-called black Japanese that came here and mixed in. Family is just so much that people don't understand. Even me, with all the knowledge that I have, there's still some missing pieces, but I know enough to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Okay? But it's not, you see, our story is not his story. Our story is a mystery. Yes, it's his story, but it's a mystery. You feel me? So don't let anybody fool you and tell you we are all Israelites. No, we are not. Don't let nobody fool you and tell you we are all Moors. No, we are not. Don't let nobody fool you and tell you all black people are from Africa. That's not true. That's not true. We lived in a world by ourselves, untouched, untapped. Literally, the children of the wilderness. Okay? That's what they're talking about, us. And then you have certain parts of what they call so-called South America and certain parts of North America, the children of the sun. So when we are putting all this in perspective, and I keep telling y'all, okay, know who you are. Just because things sound good, it doesn't mean that's what it is. No, stop taking things for face value. I'm giving you the information not to believe me, but do your own research, family. Don't believe anything that I say. I'm just giving you tools so that you could further your studies. I've done mine. I know who I am. When you see I walk and I speak, I'm not walking and speaking from a perspective of what people tell me. No. Like I told y'all before, man, I had to go celibate for 3 years. I had to be homeless. I had to go through it all to get to where I'm at right now. I had to go through the crucifixion, okay, for me to ascend into this Christ consciousness. That's why I don't lie, I don't cheat, I don't steal. That's not in my nature, because why? I gave that up, and I never used to rob and steal anyway. The point I'm making is I ascended into my Christhood. So that's why people don't understand. You have many Christs that are walking among you, but you just don't know. Because all Christ means is to be anointed. And it came to me in visions. I told y'all the story about me going to the park to work out. Okay? And a voice came into my head. All right, boom. Chief, take a break. I mean, I literally just started working out in the park. Chief, take a 5-minute break. And I was like, no, I ain't going to take no break, but I'm very obedient when the higher self speak to the lower self. I took a break, okay? Went to lay down on the bench as I was instructed by my higher self, okay? And I laid down. And I was instructed to close my eyes. And literally in less than 5 minutes, instructions came to me again. Open up your eyes. As soon as I opened up my eyes, a white dove flew over me. Where did that white dove come from? In a park, all of a sudden. My entire kundalini has set on fire, where the flames like a dragon shot. It shot through my crown chakra. I have been through it. I've already walked the walk. I've already carried my crosses. I've already been crucified, and I rose from the dead. And I'm in my Christ consciousness. This is real. It's real. But it's not what they want you to make it think. It's your personal journey. That's what Jesus was talking about. Jesus wasn't telling you about his story. He was telling you about his story, not yours. He was saying that my story is an example of what yours should be. And a lot of these people who follow Jesus, they don't follow Jesus because they don't know who Jesus was. They don't know what he exemplified because they're not being taught the truth. I am Jesus in the flesh. However, I am the Christ in my ascended state of being. There are times, sometimes I'm meditating and my pineal gland just keep pulsating to the point where I'm almost getting a bloody headache. And all I have to do is just chill, relax, close my eyes, and then I get the message. It comes so clear. Bottom line is this, family, okay? I know I spoke of a lot of things today, and I'm about to end this, but moral of the story is this. Know thyself. That is the key. Take every religion out of the picture, every other ideology out of the picture. What do you have? Self. That's why the Bible tells you what? Go back to being what? A child. Not childish, because there's a difference between being a child and being childish. Okay? Being a child meaning that go back to your innocence before you were converted, before you were damaged, before you were brainwashed. Go back to that state of mind, and you will find yourself closer to the I am that you are seeking, which is within you. Okay? Know that's what it is. Know thyself. That's why ain't nobody could come step to me and tell me no type of BS, because I know so much. And I'm not saying I know it all. I'm not aware of it all, but trust me, this brother here is well learned. Is well studied. And when I used to hear people say, well, you know what, I didn't get all my stuff in the book, it came to me, I didn't know what that meant until it started happening to me. I mean, I've literally meditated and gotten visions of wars that happened in the Americas, to the point where I cried as a grown man. I cried like a baby because I saw a lot of the wars. So the point is, just to clarify things again, King James was the first Jacobite, okay? And he changed his name to Israel. And the Bible is about him, especially the Old Testament, okay? Is about him and his ancestry and his lineage. This had nothing to do with American Indians, so-called American Indians. We had no concept of that, okay? We had a polytheistic system where we saw God in everything. We had water gods, we had rain gods, we had tree gods, we had wind gods. I mean, everything. When they were being forced to serve one God on the other side of the world, we saw God in everything. And it's not worship, okay? It was acknowledgement. That's what it was. Because we acknowledge the water, the spirit of the water. We acknowledge the spirit of the trees. We acknowledge the spirit of an animal. Because we knew that we were reflections of each other. We respected things in nature until our nature was taken away with religion. And another thing I'm going to break down with y'all, I'm going to go through a plethora of videos of church people catching the Holy Ghost. That is the original Indian dance, not the thing these natives going around talking about. And I'm not making fun of what they do. That's their culture. But that's not our thing. Okay? That is their thing. What we did had more soul. Okay? What we did had more rhythm to us. That is their thing. That is not the original American Indian dance. No, the original American Indian dance is the church dance when they catch the Holy Ghost speaking in tongues. Why? Because when they became indentured servants, okay, they couldn't do the Indian dances. They couldn't beat the drums. Okay, they couldn't wear the feathers. So what they had to do, they had to take it into the church and put that one little feather in the hat. Whether it was a man who had that feather in his hat or a woman who had her little headpiece, but she always had a feather. Okay? And they had to take that dance into the church. That is the real American Indian dance. The Crip walk is the American Indian dance. So don't let nobody fool y'all about our story. I know it. Okay? They had to stop beating on the drums, so they had to do what? They now have to beat on the trim bell. Everything had to be watered down because it had too much power. It was evoking the spirit of the ancestors, which is what God means. God means to evoke, to pour libation. So a lot of our people, they still have the culture in them. They're just misguided. They're just misguided. The whole church dance and all that celebratory, they have in church, that's part of our culture. I'm not knocking church people. I just want to help y'all bring it into perspective. So that is the real American Indian dance. The Native American dance, that's their thing. If you compare the Native American Indian dance, not Indian, the Native American, if you compare their dance to the what you call it, to the Mongolian dance, okay, culture, the Asiatic culture. They have, and I'm not talking about the original Asians, okay? I'm talking about the Mongolians. They have the same culture, the same dance. It's the same thing. That is their people. But the original American Indian dance is the church dance, what you see them do in church when they catch the Holy Ghost. The Crip walk, the dance with the Crip, that's American Indian. But I'll go into detail and show y'all that sometime. I got so much to do right now, but eventually I'll get to it. But I just want to kind of give you guys a summary of what I'm talking about. All right. So again, all these names that you have right now, don't think they came from the so-called white man. As a matter of fact, the so-called white man got the names of their black masters. Okay? Just so y'all know. And that's how the so-called pale man got in power in the United States. He was at the disadvantage. Okay? He came from the bottom and he went to the top. And that's why they don't want to relinquish power. Why? It's not because they hate us. It is because they are afraid that they will go back from whence they came. Why do you think there's no such thing as white history? Because you don't have to dig too far to see where they came from. So I say, let bygones be bygones. Okay? People who look just like me came into the Americas and enslaved my people and fought my people. Okay? Boom. They went around the world and they got their own people and enslaved their own people, brought them into the Americas. From Africa, from Europe, from Asia. They brought them here. All these people mixed in with us. Okay? But before they did all that, they brought the pale man here as slaves. So I get it. I get where so-called white people are coming from. But they're not telling you the truth of where they came from and why. They just, in their mind, they will not give you equality. You see what I'm saying? Because they know where they came from. Because they feel anytime they ease up or they take their foot off your neck, they are afraid that you will do to them what they did to you. But the point is, it was already done to them. They will never tell you that they were slaves. They will say, oh, well, indentured servants. No, it's slaves. Indentured servants who became slaves. Some of them came as slaves. Why don't you think there's no record of us coming from Africa? Because we did not come from Africa. I promise you, all the so-called black people that came here, there is a record of them in Randall's Island. Why do you think there is detailed record, okay, detailed record of all the so-called white immigrants who came here? Why? Because they had a manifest. Of a slave manifest, but not a manifest for the ship, whatever you want to call it, whether it's a slave boat, a ship, whatever, I don't care. The point is there was a manifest. However, there is no manifest of the millions and millions of so-called black people that came here as slaves because it didn't exist. It's not true. And the ones who came here, they came here willingly. Because why? Their kings sent them here on contracts. Because their kings got paid. And they say, we'll take care of your wife. We'll take care of your children. Go into the new world and help them build. These people did not come here forcefully. It's only when they came here and the 7-year contracts were up. They did not honor the contracts. Okay? So they enslaved them. So all this image of, the roots and the slave trade and people in stacked up on each other and mothers jumping out of the sea with babies in their stomach. That's a bunch of lies. Lies. Tell them Chief Kalanago said that. And I dare anybody to prove it to me. Go show me. Go get the remnants of the ship. Go ahead. Of the boats, of whatever it is. Go show me proof. I mean, we have arrowheads from our ancestors that has been around for thousands of years. Okay, we have remnants of our architect. Even on the walls, you see the original people, what they look like, that still exists. How come they could not even show you one piece of wood from a ship? Why is that? Because it wasn't real. Okay? It wasn't real. All right, family? So don't knock our church people. They're just a little misguided because they're taking the power out of them to give it to this created deity. But trust me, they are the closest thing to practicing that cultural dance, that American Indian dance. I promise you, with the shouting, okay, and the celebration, that is American Indian. Okay, the native, what they do, that's their thing. That's not ours. So I'm not knocking what they do. I respect their culture. What I don't respect is telling me that what you are is what I am, or you are the original. That's not true. You're telling a lie, and they know that they're telling lies. And the system knows that they're telling lies. But we are the ones, we just want to be black. We just want to be African American. We don't want to step into who we truly are. All right, guys. So I've been on here for 1 hour and 26 minutes. So I'm about to get out of here. Okay. I'm about to get out of here. But we have to step up. Okay. We have to step up and have a conversation. All right. And I'm going to put myself in that position. I'm going to have to step up to governments and say, listen, let us not lie to the people anymore. Okay, let bygones be bygones. You know, the entire world was enslaved. Why? Because at that time, slavery or indentured servantry, that was a form of commerce. We get it. Okay? All right? People who came here, they enslaved original American Indians. Yes. Even our own people, our own ancestors partook in slavery because it was a business. Okay, I'm not saying it's moral. I'm not saying it was right, but it was just business. It wasn't personal. Okay, it wasn't personal. Then they brought Caucasian slaves. It wasn't personal, it was business. But the pale man, when he finally took it over, he made it personal. He made it personal. Not business, but personal. So we got to step up and say, listen, let bygones be bygones. Like I said, everybody went through it. Now let's start with a clean slate. Everybody could respect who they are and where they came from. Just, we are not saying because we are the original people here, we want to get rid of everybody. No. All we are saying is we are tired of the lies and allow us to be who we are. Give us the respect because this is our land. We are the natural custodians of this land. And America will never be great again until the original people are restored. There is always going to be chaos because it's a spiritual thing. Land is spiritual. The soil is spiritual. You see, our ancestors did not own the land. The land owned us. So therefore, it is spiritual. So America will never be great again until we are restored. I don't care how much these natives say that it's their land. It's not going to happen. Why? Because the land will keep fighting. And I ain't got nothing against natives. All I'm just saying is speak the truth, man. Speak the truth. Let's start the healing of the land. Let's start the healing of the land. The healing of the people. Give us back our birthright. It is ours. And once that happens, okay, things will fall back into, at least there will be some balance. Things will start falling back into place. But until then, I don't care what they do. It will always be chaos. It will always be war. It will always be diseases. There will always be pestilence. I'm telling you. Why? Because the original people of the land, they are not restored. The original people of the land, they are in constant war. Because war is being forced upon us. We are not at ease. So therefore our land is not at ease. Our land is not settled. You see what I'm saying? I mean, when you talk about setting up altars, that's a personal thing. I mean, you could just YouTube and Google how to set up an altar. But when you set up altars, that's a personal thing because it's a personal, how would I put it? It's whether you want to call it praise, worship, or acknowledgement, or whatever the case may be. That's something personal. So you could Google that and come up with your own form of altar, with your own feelings, okay, how you want to set that up. But do that, okay. But guys, like I said, I'm about to get out of here. I don't want to keep rambling. I gave you guys the source of the sauce, the juice, whatever, the gravy of what I wanted to bring to you guys today, which was putting into perspective who the Israelites are, the true Israelites. Okay, they are not from Africa, okay, and they are not from the Americas. They are the original Scots and the Irish. Okay, a lot of the pygmies that were from Ireland, they are also Israelites. Okay, that's why St. Patrick's Day is not about snakes. It was about the pygmies, the so-called dwarves. Okay, that they destroyed, and we are here celebrating St. Patrick's Day, not even knowing the real meaning of St. Patrick's Day. That's how displaced our people are. Okay, they celebrate, okay, the genocide of people, whether it's native people, whether it's pale people, whether it's Negroid people or the Negro people. Okay, and you hear what I said, Negroid and Negro, right? Two different things. All right, and I'll explain that. Like I said before, they have the Negro de Terra and the Negro de Guinea. The Negro de Guinea are Africans and the Negro de Terra are Americans. All right. We were considered Negroes, and the Negroid was from the other side, which is essentially the same word if you ask me. But all that stuff is just about separation. Okay. And the further back you go into antiquity, no matter where they look and what they do, no matter how they try to hide it, okay, there's scientific evidence, there's oral evidence. I have so much documents to prove that the original people of this land were of a carbon-based people. All right. Now, I'm not taking away anybody's right to say that they're indigenous. All I'm just saying is give us our respect, because we are the natural custodians of this land, this side of the world. That's it. Okay. Yes, the original Irish, like I said, they were so-called dark-skinned, so-called black people. All right. The people that you call Irish right now, they migrated into that part of Ireland to be now called Irish. Okay, who are now pale. Okay, but that land was filled with what we call pygmies, which is what they call midgets. Okay, the land was filled with them. And St. Patrick, he literally brutalized and murdered them. Okay, and took over that landmass, and then brought in the Irish people that you see right now that call themselves Irish. And that's a celebratory day for them, not for us. Okay, just so y'all know. But the Israelites are those people. Okay, I already broke down Moors. Okay, America, we did not call ourselves Moors. Okay, and no, America wasn't Morocco. Okay, just so y'all know, all that stuff was done because of colonization. You cannot take over my land and tell me that's what it is. No, you are an occupier on my land. You feel me? So all these people coming here claiming to be us and saying we are them, they are colonizers. Don't let nobody fool you with that. Okay? That's why I told you guys before, in all the wars that was happening, there was supposed to be three entities. Okay? The Republic. The Republic was supposed to be for the black nobles that came from across the seas, including some Moors as well. Okay? But it was mostly the Scottish and the Irish the King James and King George's people, the black, so-called black German, all right? That was set up for them. Then the United States was set up for the pale man and his descendants. And the Iroquois Confederacy was for the original people of the land. That was supposed to be the deal, okay? But what the Republic did, these black, so-called black people, they teamed up with the pale man and say, nah, we are going to fight the American Indians. So now our people are confused, like, hold up, what's going on? So we have to either choose sides or stay neutral. So now when we got out of the picture, the Republic thought that the United States, the pale man, would have honored the treaties. Now they say, nah. So now the pale man went back to the Indians and say, listen, these people that look just like you, this is what they did. Now let me help you fight them. And that's how the Republic became dominant. But even to this day, you pledge allegiance to what? The United States and what? The Republic. It still exists, but it's dominant. So now, when the Moors made their resurgence, they came up with a grand scheme to say, oh, you know what? Let's tell every so-called black person that they are Moors. Why? Because they want us to help them fight the pale man. We are not fighting your wars. That ain't got nothing to do with us. Okay? Because the pale man is not our enemy. And I'm not saying that you are our enemy. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm just saying is this. It was a business. Now all that stuff is over. Let's leave it alone. And everybody, let's start over with respect. That's what I'm proposing. But every time you try to force us and tell us that this is who we are, this is your land spiritually, okay, it is not true. So therefore, within our spirit, there is always going to be war. Because everything starts off with the spiritual realm first, and it manifests in the flesh. You see what I'm saying? And the soil will not allow any foreign entity, okay, to be the natural custodian of the land, because we are connected to the soil. You feel me? All right. So with that being said, guys, I'm good. I'm about to leave this alone because, like I said, I could go on and on and on and on and on. I could sit around a bonfire and tell you guys so many stories that I have in my head. Okay, so much research. So I mean, I could go on and on. Where we would be around a campfire, beating drums, and give me the mic, and I will literally take y'all to a whole different dimension with this information. All right, but we good here for now. Okay, we good here for now. So, like I said, I'm putting this this organization together for us original Americans. It doesn't mean that other people cannot be a part of it, but for them to be a part of it, they have to come with a certain respect. Okay, and to me, that's that, because right now it's about the content of people's hearts. Okay, all the foreigners are here right now. There's nothing we could do. They're not going to leave. All right, so it doesn't make sense stepping back up into the bloodshed and the wars again. I think we could move forward with a mutual understanding that these people are the original people. We have to respect that. And then we create a system where they have the say, the majority of the say, because this is their land. Okay, so that we could put things back in perspective. You feel what I'm saying? So that's pretty much that. But our women have to play a significant role in this. Okay, we cannot allow what the system did to our women to manifest any longer. Why? Because our women, they birthed the nation. They have to be educated. They have to be skilled. They have to be protected so that they're able to teach our children who they are and how to navigate in their ancestral land. So our women, that's why another reason why I am so passionate about educating my sisters, because they have to get it. It's imperative that they get this. It's imperative that they get back the respect. It's really that simple. Okay? Because the truth of the matter is, no land, okay, no indigenous land. If it was taken from the father's perspective, then that is unlawful, because land was handed down through the mother. That's why all these colonizers had to marry our women. Okay, they had to marry our women so that they would have ties to the land. Why? Because the heritage was passed down through the mother. It is mother's baby, father's maybe. Mother's baby, father's maybe. It was always known who the mother was. Fathers were questionable. And ladies, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's moral, but please keep in mind, within our culture, the men were gone for at least 6 months out of the year. It just happened that our men lost their way, and a lot of them just walk away from their families or their children for a lifetime. That wasn't the culture, okay? That wasn't the culture. Men would go away for 6 months at a time, whether it was for hunting, going into different tribes, building ties, or traveling, whatever the case may be. That was the culture. But the women were always there with the children. They were, the women. And that's why I tell our women, you have lost your way so much that y'all compete with each other. Oh, well, we can't get along. I can't get along with this B. I can't do this. And she this. Nah, that's not part of our culture. Our women were the glue to the communities. There was no competition. They were sisters looking out for each other because they had to. That was part of our culture. Our men, by the time the sons became 12, they had to go away with the men for 6 months to a year into the wilderness. That's why nowadays we have men wearing panties, because there are no real men that know the culture teaching our men how to be men. And now y'all think that's cool, taking all our young boys and promoting this thing, okay, trying to make us think that it's natural. Okay, no, it's not normal for men to wear panties. That is not part of our culture. And our women were not trying to be men. No disrespect to you and what you do, but I'm just letting you know it's not part of our culture. Period. There's nothing wrong with a man acknowledging the feminine aspect of his divinity. There's nothing wrong with a sister acknowledging the masculine aspect of her divinity. But it was taught to bring balance. You see what I'm saying? Not to make our men wear panties and our women take the role of men, thinking they're men. That is something that was taught and learned from another culture. So I'm not going to glorify Hollywood or our women promoting our little boys turning into girls. But I don't want to turn that into a whole different story. Okay? I'm going to let y'all go now. You guys enjoy the rest of your continuation. Please do your own research. And this is Chief Kalanago with another video. I love y'all. We'll talk soon. Take care.